Car crash cases, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts. The attorneys with Josh Wright from the law firm of Hollis, Wright, and host David Lamb.
Good evening and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For the next half hour, we have a panel of experts assembled to talk about something that none of us can avoid. That'll make sense whenever we let you know what we're talking about tonight. But first, a couple of reminders of how you can join our conversation. We'd love to hear from you. The show is always better whenever you are involved. Ways to do so. You can text us. That number is 205-670-1949, or you can call us toll free. That number 844-529-8255, 844-529-8255. Leading our conversation tonight, as he often does, managing partner of Hollis Wright, Josh Wright. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too. This is a show that is going to become more and more relevant over the next month or so.
Boy, isn't it though?
It's about the tax man, and the tax man cometh is the name of this show.
For good reason. Yeah.
So, you know, David, we talk a lot about different areas of the law that our firm may not handle, but what we try and do is get experts involved that can help answer issues and questions associated with those topics. And taxes are one of them. But it's a very important area of the law. Brad Howell from Meadows and Howell, who's been on the show before, is with us today. First of all, welcome.
Good to be here.
Glad to have you on. And this is really, when we talk about specialties, this is a very unique area of the law, specialty, but one that's super important because if you make some bad decisions, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble.
Definitely. It's something that you need to prepare yourself before the April 15th deadline comes around and make sure you know what you're doing, make sure you're withholding the correct amount, and that when it comes time to file, you either know how to file yourself or have someone to do it for you.
One of the interesting things that I learned in kind of the pre-production process and learning a little bit about this topic to get ready for today was that the government prosecutes, the IRS prosecutes 2,500 to 3,000 people to you know, for serious penalties each year. So it's a big deal. I mean, it can affect Alabamians that don't do it the right way.
Right, and while the number of cases as far as the overall number of filers that they prosecute is very small, they do have a very high conviction rate. So if they're going after you criminally, they pretty much know they have a case against you.
When the tax man cometh, be careful. You need to go get Brad Howell, right?
No kidding.
All right, so let's talk about a couple things. One, tell me just a little bit about your law firm, how you got into this area of the law, because it really is a specialty.
Sure. So when we started out, we were looking for kind of a niche area to actually fulfill. And we found that there were a lot of law firms throughout the state who actually did not cover this area of law. Some attorneys do a lot of upfront tax planning as far as estate planning and asset protection, but not actually the backside of it. You know, once you're already in an audit or once you have been assessed, how do you handle that? And so that's something that we wanted to get involved in. And luckily had a mentor who actually taught us how to do this area of law, and we set up our own practice, and we've been doing it for almost a decade now.
So is this something your practice completely specializes in, or do y'all do some other things too on top of that?
Sure, there are some things that are tangentially related to it. So we have a lot of people who they're getting into tax issues or have tax questions because they've started a business. So we do business entity creation, a lot of general business like contract review or creation, and then we do some asset protection and estate planning as well.
All right, so let's kind of jump off from this perspective. We talked a little bit about the prosecutions that do happen. When do you recommend, if you've been contacted by the IRS, for example, when do you recommend that you contact an attorney and get somebody on your side? Because I would imagine that's pretty important to understand how to be kind of led through this process.
Definitely. So it can be, it depends. It's a case-by-case scenario. For example, if you've been contacted by the IRS for an audit, but you've had an accountant prepare your return, and that accountant is comfortable with handling the audit, there's really not a need to get an attorney involved at that point in time. But at some point in time, it goes beyond an accountant's expertise, especially when you get to collection of taxes. And if there's an appeal that has to go to U.S. tax court or for the state in front of the tax tribunal, there are a lot of scenarios in which an accountant or other professional really can't assist you. So I would say once you know that there's a balance owed and you're trying to determine how to best pay it back, it's best to get involved with someone who does tax debt resolution like us at that time.
All right, so I know one of the issues that will come up is someone sitting on the couch right now saying, all right, look, I've got a tax lien against me, and I want to put my head in the sand because I don't want to deal with it. That's a bad call, isn't it?
It is.
All right, and tell us why, because I don't think people realize why that's a dangerous position and kind of a dangerous thing to do.
Sure. So once either the IRS or Department of Revenue has filed a lien, that means that the assessment has gone final. It's now a legally binding decision that has the same authority as a court's judgment. So that means that they can forcefully collect from you if you don't do anything about it. That can include anything from wage garnishment and bank levies to seizure of property. So it's very important that once that lien is filed, and even before, honestly, but definitely once it's been filed, that you take some sort of steps to resolve this, because it's not going away at that point.
Is there an ability, Brad, to get a lawyer involved to negotiate some of these things, to pay them over time, to reduce the lien? I mean, is that something that your firm is able to do?
Sure. With the IRS, there is a Fresh Start initiative that can allow you to remove the lien if the debt is under a certain amount, $25,000 or less, and if you set up a direct debit installment agreement to resolve it over 5 years. Then there's the offer and compromise, which is where you can settle the debt for less than what's owed with the IRS. So there are a lot of options that a professional can review your financial situation, determine what would be best for you, and try to get the best result.
You know, I use the phrase sticking your head in the sand because sometimes lawyers, you hear about, you know, a client that says, I don't want to have to deal with this. Right. This is stressful. This is not one of those deals where that's what you want to do, right? You've got to get someone like Brad involved early and quickly, just to give you options of, hey, all right, look, we get it, you're in a bad spot, but there are ways out of this. And that's why you want to have a guy like Brad on your side 100%.
Yeah. Let me ask a question that we've got in before we're about to go to break, but I want to get this in. Should I file my return if I owe taxes and am unable to pay them?
I would say so, just solely because of the fact that if you file the return late, you're going to accrue a late filing penalty. That's a percentage of the balance owed. And that's almost like interest, that it's a percentage that does accrue monthly.
Right.
And you're also going to have a late payment penalty. So my general advice would be file the return on time, because even if you get an extension, that gives you more time to file the return, not to pay the taxes. Mm-hmm. File the return on time, pay as much as you can with the filing of the return by April 15th, and then negotiate an installment agreement from there.
When we come back, let's talk about the fact that your refunds can get intercepted too. By the IRS to pay tax liens. We'll talk about that when we come back.
The old IRS interception. How about that? All right, we're heading to our first break. As we do so, a reminder, would love to have you be a part of our conversation, ways to do that as well. Also, Hollis Wright all over social media. Find them on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as well. Just search Hollis Wright and you will find them there. Stay tuned. We are coming right back.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm. Thank you for watching The Attorneys. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple. Provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury-related topics, you can call, email, or text us. Or you can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or simply contact us by going to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us watching The Attorneys.
It's common for a potential client to ask, there are many great firms out there. What separates Hollis Wright from other law firms? My response is generally to talk about the strengths of our law firm in handling cases throughout Alabama and the United States. That we've recovered through verdicts and settlements, hundreds of millions of dollars for our clients. That we have financial resources to hire any required expert and to take their case all the way to trial, even if it costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars to do so. That we settle cases for top dollar before trial is needed because the insurance companies and defendants know we have the ability to take a case all the way to trial. That we handle cases only on a contingency fee, which means we never ask the client to pay any costs of litigation whatsoever and only recover those costs in a fee. if we win for the client. That we have a staff of more than 20 employees that help us litigate cases from start to finish. That we've had a television show on NBC 13 for 6 years that answers thousands of questions to citizens for free each year. But what I've learned in the last 20 years as a trial lawyer is that clients want more and deserve more than all those things. Those things are expected of each law firm they consider. So with that wisdom, what I tell clients now is simply this. We are a family-oriented practice at Hollis Wright, just like their own family. That we are a team-oriented group that engages in team-building exercises and team-building events because it helps our clients win cases. That we are dads and moms and brothers and sisters. That we are former Alabama trial lawyer presidents. That we return every single telephone call from every single client. That our bedside manner is second to none. So what really separates our firm from others? We're balanced and well-rounded, and as such, we relate to people not just as lawyers, but as compassionate human beings. Human beings that know what it's like to face a day in court. We are advocates, we are compassionate, we are tireless. We are, simply put, Hollis Wright.
We are talking taxes tonight on The Attorneys. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you doing so each and every weekend. A reminder of how you can join our conversation, a couple of different ways to do so. You can text us that number 205-670-1949, or you can call us toll free at 1-844-529-8255. Josh?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, the numbers and the text that we give. You know, we also allow people to, they can tweet us. I think that's the correct phrase. They can hit us on Facebook. They can email us. I mean, there are a lot of ways on the bottom of the screen to get in touch with us. And you will get a live lawyer that night. That's right. During the show now to answer these questions. And so that's kind of an important thing that we started many, many years ago when we started this show, which is that we're going to answer every call, email, or text to try and help the public.
There is no excuse. I mean, every means available as easy as possible, trying to make it easy. So if you've got a question, you can get it answered.
Well, and you know, the interesting thing is people sometimes think to themselves, well, I'm concerned to contact them because it may not be confidential. Right. One of the things that's unique about this show is it is confidential. We're not going to put you on the air. Yeah. But if you got a legal issue, there's no reason not to ask a lawyer if you can get a lawyer for free. And that's one of the things we do on the show. Yep. All right, let's talk about this concept of if I get a refund, because we hear this question a lot. If I get a refund, but my refund was taken by the IRS to pay a lien. Is that something you see at times?
Yeah, it definitely is. And so under that scenario, you don't want to contact the IRS or Department of Revenue because at that point in time, there's nothing they can do. What happens is you have a third party that has contacted the IRS or state and they have indicated that there's a debt owed that they legally can intercept the tax refund. So your only recourse that you have at that point is to contact the creditor. So for example, with the IRS, there's very few amount or type of debts that can be a tax refund can be intercepted and applied. So you've got things like obviously federal taxes that are owed, state taxes, child support, or if you've got a student loan that's federally backed. So in those instances, and just to use one that we see that's pretty common, the student loan. Yeah. You need to contact the lender, and that indicates if they've intercepted your tax refund that your loan is in default. Yeah. So if you can cure that default, set up an installment agreement, then they're not going to take next year's refund, but legally speaking, because your account was in default, they do have the ability to take that year's refund.
Talk a little bit about, I know that when we get a new president and we get a new Congress in Washington, D.C., sometimes the laws change. Mm-hmm. There have been some adjustments in the 2017-18 timeframe, have there not? And yes. How has that impacted taxpayers and the things that we file on a yearly basis?
Yeah, so in 2017, they had the new tax act that came in. That affected, starting in 2018 or 2019, depending on what you're talking about. So, and that is kind of complex because we see a lot of changes in a lot of different areas. For individual filers, one of the biggest things that we've seen is the adjustment to the standard deduction amount and the removal of the personal exemption amount. So usually, just as an example, if you were a single filer in 2017 and you're not going to itemize deductions, you would have had a standard deduction amount of $6,350 and a personal exemption amount for yourself that was $4,050. So you're looking at $10,400. Now they've gotten rid of the exemption amount and they've increased your standard deduction to $12,000. So for a person who is single and not going to itemize, they're getting a benefit there because they are getting a larger deduction. For other people, however, if you did itemize and you itemized quite a bit, let's just say single filer itemized $10,000, you had a personal exemption of $4,050, you would have been able to claim $14,050 as a deduction on your 2017 return, and now you're limited to $12,000. Okay. So that's kind of what we're looking at as far as changes, and obviously you look at each individual scenario and the numbers can be different from person to person. So.
How do you, what advice do you generally give to someone if they say, look, I have done pretty well by the IRS throughout my life, but last year I did not file taxes, and I'm late and I know I owe taxes. What's your general recommendation to someone like that comes to you and says, look, I just didn't do it. I know I'm in trouble now. What do I do?
Sure. Just go ahead and get the return prepared, assess the damage and see what is owed, if anything. And then from there, go ahead and get the return filed and just be in contact with the IRS. The issue is if you have reported income from your employer, whether it be a W-2 or a 1099, and you don't file, the IRS has already received it from your employer. They'll usually wait maybe 3 years from the due date of the return before they do anything, but eventually they can file a return on your behalf. And when they do that, they don't know if you're going to itemize deductions. They don't know what credits you're going to be eligible for. So when they calculate your tax liability, it's probably going to be higher than if you had filed the return. So just go ahead and file it. And it's not something where as soon as you file it, they're going to be knocking on your door or collecting from you. You get numerous notices from them. You get the chance to know what's going on and to respond to them before anything negative happens to you.
It sounds to me a lot like the IRS is fairly reasonable. I mean, they're probably strict in what's owed, but fairly reasonable in working with people that have come into circumstances where they either didn't file a return or they haven't paid their taxes, and they're willing to work with you.
Yeah, they really are. If you look at all their internal procedures and guidelines, there are a multitude of options. Obviously, you're dealing with a government agency that has to oversee millions of returns and millions of people. Yeah. So getting a timely response, sometimes things do get overlooked if they're in a rush, especially after this government shutdown and they're trying to get caught back up. So, I mean, there are times when it can be difficult to deal with them, but usually if you stay on top of it, you can get it straightened out.
Question we've got here. Not enough taxes were withheld from my wages and now I owe. Can I sue my employer?
That is something that, generally speaking, no, you can't do. Even if it's a situation where your employer was completely in the wrong with their calculations, the end result there is that if you had fewer taxes withheld from your pay, then you're getting more income at the end of the day. So you are the one who's actually in possession of the funds that would have been paid to the government for taxes. So you can't then turn around and sue your employer and make them pay the taxes that are owed. Now, if there is some sort of intentional wrongdoing, you may be able to get them to, in a lawsuit, pay for interest and penalties. Right. But those taxes are still always going to be your liability.
Okay. We're getting ready to go to break. Yeah. When we come back, one of the things I do want to talk about is employers sometimes will try and qualify people as an independent contractor as opposed to an employee to save on having to pay certain payroll taxes. Right. And I want to talk a little bit about that and what you should do if you find yourself in that circumstance.
Okay, we'll pick up right there. Stepping aside, our final break of the evening. As we do so, a reminder, like Josh said earlier, attorneys from Hollis Wright standing by live for about the next 10 minutes or so. So take advantage of that opportunity to get some free, off-air, confidential legal advice. That's about 10 more minutes remaining that they're going to be standing by. Stay tuned. We've got more of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright. As with any industry, it's important in the legal world to hire an attorney that is knowledgeable and has a track record of success. But with so many attorneys out there and so many different types of cases, how does someone decide the right lawyer to hire? In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, what should I consider in hiring an attorney? In-state versus out-of-state, big firm or little firm, recommendations from friends or family, the internet, the phone book, or TV. With so many choices and so much information, it can be an overwhelming task trying to make the right decision. To complicate things, choosing a lawyer is an important and sometimes life-affecting decision and should not be taken lightly. So how do you select an attorney? First, do your research. Look the firm up on the internet. Learn about the cases they handle and the results they get. Second, find out what clients are saying about the firm. Many websites provide client testimonials or have a star ranking system. Use those to your advantage. And finally, talk with a lawyer from their office and ask them questions. Questions about the volume of cases they handle. Do they return phone calls? Are you just a number or a client that gets the attention you deserve? Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a confident lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys right here on WVTM 13.
Welcome back into The Attorneys, our final segment. So if you want to speak to an attorney off air, take advantage of that opportunity. A few minutes remaining, and if you'd like to text us, you can do so at 205-670-1949 or call us at 844-529-8255. Josh?
All right, so Brad, when we went to break, I kind of mentioned that there are circumstances that we have seen and that you learn about kind of in the process of doing this work, where employers will qualify someone as an independent contractor as opposed to an employee to save on payroll taxes. Mm-hmm. Just talk a little bit about that, and if you find yourself in that spot or that jam, what you should do.
Sure. And that's something that we see that is somewhat common, and I think the benefit there for the employer is that if you're an employee, they have to pay half of your Social Security and Medicare taxes. That comes out of their pocket as opposed to just being withheld from your income. Although that is a deductible expense for them, obviously some employers do try to avoid it. And I think there's some confusion there where some employers think, well, I have the option of either classifying you as an employee or an independent contractor. In reality, it all depends upon the nature of the employment. So generally speaking, an independent contractor is someone who's viewed as self-employed. They have the possibility of incurring a loss because they take on a lot of expenses. They bring their own expertise and equipment to the table. Whereas an employee, they typically show up day to day, work a set number of hours. They're paid hourly. They get fringe benefits. Yeah. They're closely supervised and trained. So you need to look at those factors and determine, do they classify as an independent contractor or an employee? And you have to make that determination. If they have been misclassified or you feel like you have, what you can do is file a Form SS8 with the IRS, submit all the terms of your employment with your employer, and they'll make a determination for you.
And David, the reason that even matters from the employee or the independent contractor's perspective is, if you're an independent contractor, you're probably going to receive a 1099 where no taxes have been taken out. Then it's on you at the end of the year to manage and handle that on your own, whereas it should have been handled and managed by the employer throughout the year. So it does matter. If you feel like you're in a jam, in a circumstance where someone's misclassifying you, it's probably best to get some legal advice. And there's a way to get some legal advice for free, as we well know.
Right, yep. Question, getting low on time, but I want to get this question in. I've been contacted by someone claiming to be the IRS. Is this legit? Does the IRS ever contact you by phone?
The vast majority of time, no. If you're working with an individual auditor during an audit, or if you have a local revenue officer that's been assigned to collections, sometimes they will call you, but you're going to definitely receive letters from the IRS before anyone ever contacts you. And especially if someone calls you and they demand payment right then over the phone, or if they dictate the manner in which you make payment, they say you have to go get a gift card or you have to do this or that. The IRS doesn't do that. If you send in a check to the IRS, they're fine. If you make a payment over the phone, they're fine. But especially if they're asking for money, you can pretty much bet that's a scam.
Yeah, he's seen it all, asking for gift cards. Well, it's crazy how complicated the schemes have gotten. I mean, just as a lawyer, the email schemes that we get about representing clients, I know is something that 5 years ago we probably would have trusted. Now we know that some of this stuff is scams. So I know with the IRS there are people that really try and take advantage of it. All right, answer this question, because I've gotten this quite a bit over the last 12 months. Why are people receiving less back in their returns than they feel like traditionally they have? Is there an answer to that, or is it just the economy's changed? I mean, is it a tax law difference? What is it?
Yeah, so due to all the changes they made, they started with they adjusted the calculations or the formulas they use to determine what should be withheld from your pay. In July 2018, the GAO, they released a report saying we think the calculations were actually done improperly. And so less than what should have been withheld was being withheld. And so a lot of people are filing their returns now. They were happy during the year that they got more money back, but now they're seeing that they actually owe. And we're seeing something like, I think, over 30 million taxpayers are now going to owe, whereas previously those 30 million wouldn't have owed.
See, and I could see where that would be frustrating.
Yeah, well, shoot,
and I mean, somebody else's mistake, right, in the way they calculated things. But it is a question we get quite a bit. So
I'm sure. All right, just about out of time, but want to give both of you an opportunity for a final thought. And Brad, if you would, you go first, please, sir.
Sure. When it comes to taxes, I think you need to have a plan in place. It needs to be something that you're doing something throughout the year in regards to having taxes withheld and paid in. And you need to probably meet with an accountant or otherwise just ensure that sufficient amount is being withheld. And if at the end of the year, when it comes time to file, you find that you owe money and not enough was withheld, go ahead, file the return. There's always a plan of action that you can take to go ahead and mitigate any damages and go ahead and set up an installment agreement or otherwise resolve the debt owed.
You know, what I would say, David, is exactly what Brad just talked about, is mitigating damage. A lot of times we find ourselves in circumstances where we've made a math error, we've made a mistake in our return, we failed to file a return. Whatever the circumstance may be, sticking your head in the sand, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, is a really, really bad decision. Your goal and focus should be to try and get this thing right. Because interest is going to accrue, and it will continue to accrue and compound on top of itself. And at the end of the day, there are ways out, right? Yeah. So getting with a guy like Brad who can give you some free legal advice to start, and then maybe you retain him to help you work your way out of it is super important. So don't stick your head in the sand. Get to somebody that can help you.
No time like today. Yep. It's always good, Brad, when you're with us. Thanks so much. Appreciate you guys being with us, and always appreciate you being with us as well. Thanks so much for joining us each and every week. We'll look for you next time right here on The Attorneys. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.